That's my cue. We'll get started. Hello, everybody. For those of you who've not met me before, I'm Stuart Armstrong. I'm the strategic lead for workforce transformation at Sport England. And as part of that role, I have the great fortune to work with, alongside, through the great people at Coach Corps. We've been working together for probably, well, more than about 2 or 3 years, really, since I came into post initially as head of coaching, and we've been working together to build, I guess, more young people coming into the world of coaching within sport and physical activity, and it's been a really exciting journey, and I'm hoping that we're going to be able to share some of those stories today. First and foremost, just a quick bit of housekeeping, just to let everybody know that we're going to be recording the session. It's on video. There's not necessarily going to be lots of people coming in to talk, but just to let everybody know that. But it means you can also be able to access this subsequently in case you miss any of the pearls of wisdom emanating from the guests. You can obviously just not worry about what I say. And we're going to be looking at a lot of different things, but particularly looking in about apprenticeships and the value of apprenticeships. We've written into a couple of the workforce strategies at Sport England the desire to increase the number of apprentices in our sector. We lag behind a bit, and we want to try and address that, and this webinar is a very big part of that. So I'm excited to be here with you today. But in particular, one of the things we're very keen on doing is, as we re-emerge and start to rebuild post-pandemic, is to really explore the role that apprentices have got to play in helping the sport and physical activity sector, get back to where we wanted to get to, and if not, reinvent itself through the power and ingenuity and innovation of young people and the energy of young people. So we've got a number of different guests to talk to today. It's kind of a game of two halves, so to speak, where the first part I'm going to be talking to Gary Laybourne, CEO of Coach Corps, and Jason Fergus from Active Essex. I'm going to get them to introduce themselves and tell you a little bit about themselves. Gary, let me come to you first. Gary, hello, welcome, great to be here, and tell the world all about yourself.
Yes, good morning, everybody. I have the absolute privilege of being CEO of Coach Corps, and of also the even greater privilege of being part of it since day one. So, as we'll talk about a little bit later, Coach Corps was started in 2012 to rip up the form book on apprenticeships so that it became something that was really valuable to young people, but also to employers as well. My entire background is around coaching and sports development, and as a long-time triathlete as well. So I like to think that I have the opinions of an employer, a participant, a student, and all of those kind of things that have followed me through my journey. So yeah, me in a nutshell.
And Jason, welcome to today's session. Very excited to see you here. We haven't caught up for a very long time, and I know you've been doing all sorts, particularly in the apprenticeship space, if not all things workforce. Great to have you here. And if you wouldn't mind just giving the quick minute of introduction for everybody.
Thanks very much, Stuart, and good afternoon. And again, like Gary, privileged to be here today. I'm absolutely committed to supporting what I think is a really exciting agenda. So I look forward to diving in a little more detail a little bit later on. But I have the privilege of leading Active Essex. Active Essex is one of 43 active partnerships, and I've been with the partnership since we created Active Essex just after the London 2012 Games, which was also a key part of my work programme as well. So sport is within my DNA, and physical activity as well, and making opportunities for all. So this is right up my street. So I'm really pleased to be able to contribute here this afternoon, Stuart. So thank you.
Great, and it's brilliant to have you here. So just so everybody knows, when you were registering, we asked for a number of different questions. The Coach Corps team asked for a number of different questions from you and concerns and areas you wanted to cover. We've taken those on board, and we are going to do our best to try and get through as many of those as possible as we shape today's conversation. Let's start from the beginning, Gary. Every time I meet with you, I learn a little bit more about apprenticeships. I like to think I know a bit, but there's a lot to learn. It's a steep learning curve. So I wonder if you could start out by giving us the Cliff Notes version, if you like, Apprenticeships 101.
Sure, happy to. And do not profess to be any kind of expert myself, just someone that happens to have been around it a lot longer than most. So Yeah, essentially an apprenticeship, and apologies for those dialing in that know that little bit, but the point of today was, of course, to talk about the work of Coach Corps, but actually we wanted to provide an opportunity for people, as you say, to learn about Apprenticeships 101, because lots of the sign-up commentary that we got was from people that are still completely baffled by it, don't know how it applies, and basically the power of what apprenticeships can do. So very happy to kind of start at base level for the next sort of couple of minutes. Essentially, it is an on-the-job learning experience. So as an employer, for the majority that are dialing in as employers today, you would be expected to give 30 hours a week to your learners. That can be a mixture of things. So one of the biggest misconceptions is that that has to be 30 hours per week on the job all the time. So in our sector, you know, the most classic example is coaching all that time. Whereas essentially it can be a mixture of things. So it can be their education days, it can be extra training courses, it can be, and we positively encourage it to be, additional duties, working front of house, admin, social media, whatever it might be, so that they can build up that blend of skills and become a real asset to the organisation. Those 30 hours can also flex. They don't have to be evidenced or shown as set things week on week. So, you know, if you have busier times of the year, again, with our sector, let's call it the summer holidays, when we have all those camps running, they can actually do more at a time where actually there's others where it might be that little bit quieter. And even perhaps, shock upon shock, you can work with other organisations and provide those hours from elsewhere. So those hours are much more flexible than I think people realise. The other element is that there needs to be a formal fixed contract in place. And again, that scares some of our smaller providers. So we know that, you know, UK businesses, 95% are SMEs. So it's not these major organisations that are taking on apprentices. There are a number of small organisations, with the only real thing that's needed from you is that fixed contract. Now, again, there's flexibility in that. You can share apprentices. As long as there is one organisation that has that contract in place, you can share those hours and share those duties with other organisations. So that's another thing that kind of wanted to underline today. Alongside that contract, you are expected to pay a national minimum wage. Now, for many, that might be the national minimum apprentice wage. And for others, you may need to pay living wage. It's case by case basis, but roughly speaking, if I use Coach Corps as an example, on a level 2 apprenticeship, you're looking in and around about £10,000 across 15 months to have that apprentice in place. Now, there's lots of sort of little caveats here and there on that. Grants available, incentives that are, you know, moving throughout the year to bring that cost down. And again, very case by case. But actually, when you look at, let's say, a fixed figure of £10,000 across 15 months, divide that up, plus the revenue that's coming in, attached to the fact that you've got that extra staff member in place, it makes it an incredible economic proposition for even the smallest of providers. The other thing that's of key importance, that certainly from a Coach Corps perspective, you know, we insist upon, and it's part of our big due diligence, is who is shaping that young person. So there will be a training provider in place. You would not be expected to do that education yourself. Those training providers that are out there are, you know, increasingly of high quality now, whereby that tutor will come in, work next to and alongside the employer as much as the apprentice, to understand that environment and shape that learning around the needs of the business as well as the young person. So that sort of education element is taken care of and not, you know, doesn't fall on the employer's lap, but critically so does that financial drawdown around some things like the big scary word that everybody's heard about is levy. So huge organisations that pay into this digital tax essentially will have no training fees to pay. But again, going right back to our small, medium employers in the sector, at worst, you would be looking at a 5% contribution, which again, on a level 2 like Coach Corps, that's £300. So there are a number of different things that I think scare people and put people off, the finances being one. It's actually so much more viable as an option than I think people really understand and consider. But also, as I say, in terms of the workplace, those on-the-job hours and where that apprentice spends most of their time, who is that manager that helps shape and support it? So if you really want to get the true value out of that young person or any apprentice coming into the business, you need to really think and consider about who is going to be there to support and develop them. Because obviously, same way that, again, with a coaching example, if I'm given a bad coach, my actual outputs and performance and my experiences in that sport or activity are going to be quite negative. Same in the workplace. If I have a workplace mentor that's going to be there, really care about me, understand me, have a plan for me short and long term, not only is my experience going to be enhanced, but actually the apprenticeship itself is going to be so much more valuable to the actual business itself. So just a few sort of bullet points there around what an apprenticeship is. It'll have a fixed term that will be dependent on the qualification agreed with you. All of those costs, any training provider should be talking to you well in advance and upfront about, and also calculating what that means to you as a business. So again, the ultimate ambition is that you get a learner who is developed, supported, and becomes a real asset to the business. But critically, not just as an employee, you're also then developing them for the next stages of their journey, either with you or if they move on. Hope that kind of gets the ball rolling.
Yeah, that's great, Gary. Probably also worth mentioning, I suppose, that in some cases, in certain parts of the country, then there is some support available to cover some of those initial employment costs, take away some of those risks. Is that worth just drawing upon?
Absolutely, especially in current climate. So as we know, pandemics hit everybody hard. Whatever we feel around government, one of the big positives has been the financial support and aid that's been provided to businesses and organisations. And in an apprenticeship space, they're actually providing enhanced incentives. So previously, you would get a financial cash instalment for taking on, let's say, a 16 to 18-year-old if you were less than 50 employees, which sums up many of the situations that we see. But now actually there's even greater incentives to just take on an apprentice full stop right now, through to kind of the end of the year. So yes, there's funding available to help support some of those salary costs. And as I mentioned earlier, in terms of even the education itself, the drawdown and the ability to get that funded as well is all in place for you. And organisations like Coach Corps and the other training providers that are out there that we work alongside and know so well, they'll be able to provide you case by case as to what those costs are.
Great stuff. Thank you. Great opener. So Jason, let me turn to you. You've been at the properly at the coalface of this, leading a number of I guess consortia of employers within the Active Essex area, and I guess it's probably worth saying pioneering some of this. One of the early partnerships that really embraced apprenticeship. So I imagine you've got a wealth of knowledge and learning to share around your experiences and the experiences of some of the organisations that you work with and through.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I was reflecting actually as I was coming into virtually travelling to this particular meeting today, I was reflecting upon, actually it's been over 4 years now, and I've known Gary for about 5 years now. And so there's been a long-standing relationship. I suppose there's something about relationships and about progress moves at the speed of trust, and I've been really quite privileged just to see how the Essex programme has developed, Stuart. I reflect back, and I suppose at the very outset of this, I think we were in Essex, we were really clear that actually we absolutely wanted to develop and still are continuing to develop a highly skilled and dynamic workforce. I think that absolutely is kind of the key starting point for us. We know already in Essex that that our sector employs something around 22,000 people. But what we do know that actually that accounts for 2.5% of the jobs in the county. So we know that we're contributing to the economic value here in Essex. But if we want to continue to do that, it was really important that we were able to develop and continue to develop a new skill set of young coming through our sector that can really add value to our strategic aspirations. So 4 years ago, we launched a strategy at Active Essex, which was called Change 1 Million Lives to Get Essex Active. Now, quite clearly, in order to do that, we absolutely need a skilled and dynamic workforce. And that was for us exactly where Coach Corps and the development of apprenticeships absolutely sat quite squarely for us. And we saw the Coach Corps programme and the opportunity to really align with our aspiration of actually, we call it grow our own. How do we grow our own and develop the future workforce? The people that are going to take my job in the future, how do we develop them to make sure that they can have a really impactful operations approach here in the county? So I'm pleased to say we're now in year 4, Stuart, and we've seen 68 young people graduate through the programme here in Essex. And one of the things that we did as the active partnership, we very much felt a real custodial approach, that we really wanted to play that kind of consortia lead role to bring together our key partners here in the county. So quite aptly, we created Team Essex, and Team Essex in year 1 pulled together an array of employers from both the sports sector, but actually also the community partner sector as well. And I think that's really quite important, that it wasn't just for example, NGBs or local sports clubs, but actually some of that kind of wider community sector, for example, Council for Voluntary Services and other such organisations. And what we've been able to do is work with them as a consortium to really develop and create those placement opportunities for our young people here in Essex. And I have to say that I've been privileged to see those 68 young people. I make it an absolute given that I get to meet them on their first day and actually speak to them, but actually to see them develop, importantly, Stuart, the skills through this programme and an apprenticeship programme, I think is quite second to none. And I think that what we're trying to do, and that what Coach Core absolutely is doing, is equipping and creating the young people, the workforce of the future, because that's absolutely key. If we haven't got a workforce of future, we haven't got a sector. And I think this absolutely chimes with everything that I think the New Sport England strategy is talking to, and very much what active partnerships are here to do, is about kind of creating that kind of long-term sustainability, Stuart, and that future.
And I would entirely concur with that. Genuinely, one of the things that I believe has been a really powerful impact of Coach Core, certainly from my perspective, is its ability to, I guess, bring people into our workforce who might otherwise not have considered a career in sport, physical activity, but in particularly from communities, again, that, you know, often have little provision, or it's harder to get access to courses and all those sorts of things. So the benefit that you're training while you're learning, so you're learning and you're earning at the same time, you're getting qualifications as a result of that, and then that can then springboard off onto either other employment, further education, or whatever, is a really powerful model. I don't want to steal all your thunder, Gary, but benefits of having an apprentice for an employer. You guys at Coach Core wrote a blog post recently. You called it the 3 R's. So I wonder if you could just touch on the 3 R's for us a little bit.
Yeah, sure. I think, again, you know, it talks to that kind of joined up approach. I mean, Coach Core, again, happily coming back to this later, everything we do is about partnership and listening to the employers that we work with, the partners such as Sport England and the Active Partnership Network, etc., you know, really trying to understand what it is that's needed. And for us, the Sport England strategy, the bit that really chimed was that kind of recover and rebuild and reinvent. So those 3 R's for us is absolutely critical, because we've been banging the drum around the power of young people and what they can do for businesses for a long time. And if I can almost be crass about it, I think there was a misconception for many, many years, and potentially still is, that apprentices, and certainly young apprentices, come in, they make the tea, they clean the toilets, they do all the jobs that you don't want them to do. You tick some boxes and you feel all right because you've given them a qualification, and out the other end they go. And for any employer that kind of subscribes to that thinking, I mean, one, obviously there's a number of different things that I want to pick apart there, but the main thing is that you are losing the opportunity of a lifetime for them and for you as an organization. So, you know, we know from the research that we've been doing across the last year, so we took a snapshot survey of our employers when COVID really hit on the first lockdown, and we've just repeated the same level of study recently. And, you know, 3/4 of them nearly have reported that there's been severe impact on their business. Now, when you're presented with an economic opportunity, if nothing else, to rebuild your organisation with apprentices, with the incentives that are in place, with organisations like Coach Core that are going to support and work with you on that and provide some grant funding as well, it becomes a bit of a no-brainer, if I'm honest. But critically, the most important thing is, as I go back to, is what that opportunity represents for you as a business to bring in young, new, diverse workforce. They're going to come equipped with new ideas, new thinking, new angles on everything. So, you know, for example, we've just taken on our first ever apprentice. We're a very small charity, but we've just taken on one of our first apprentice, who was one of our graduates from the first program, and come in on a fundraising apprenticeship. Who better to tell the story? But actually, with his position and his background, he's supporting the work that James is doing on the digital and the creative side of things. So we're getting huge value across the business from the fact that this person has lived experience, different angles and things that they can provide to the business, as well as the qualification that they're studying. From our perspective as well, it's also a case that these guys are coming in and they are also providing an opportunity to expand your operations. So again, depending on the mindset and how you're framing this, if this is to come in and be a nice thing to do, that growth will only go so far. But if you have a really fixed plan of support and of operations, that this young person, yes, they're going to take a little bit of short-term molding and shaping, but actually we then have this potential site 12 months from now that they could own and operate and run and move through, then obviously your business expands and those operations and the revenue that comes with it can also expand. So there's a number of different reasons, all positive, as to why you would want to take an apprentice on, young or old, it doesn't really matter. But I think it's that twofold, again, it goes back to that point, it's that twofold benefit for you as an organisation to bring in those different ideas, energy and passion that perhaps you wouldn't normally have if you continue to sort of hire using the same workforce strategy. But also for that young person, you're providing a real springboard for them to be exposed to the world of work, to your organisation, so that you can really mould and shape them. And then if they stay with you, great, you know, they're going to really live and breathe your values, arguably better than anybody. But even if they then go on to leave you, obviously the impact that will have on their lives and those around them will be huge.
I think just to add to that, Gary, you're absolutely right. 80%, Stuart, of our apprentices are still working within our sector. That's quite phenomenal, because that clearly means that the employers that they've had, the opportunity, the experience that they've had, has absolutely given that enthusiasm and passion to say, this is where I want to work and I really enjoy it. So, and that wouldn't have come about if it wasn't for Coach Core and the employers and the whole approach that you're going to hear a little bit about later today. So I really endorse the fact that actually the fact that we've kept those young people in our sector has been quite exciting and quite privileged, because they've enjoyed that experience. And there's something absolutely about making sure that is a worthwhile experience, and absolutely as an employer, that's certainly been our gift to do that. And we've certainly done that here in Essex to really make it an enjoyable experience, something that they can learn from, not just make the tea and clean the toilets, but really develop their own ideas. Because actually, I'll be honest with you, what we've seen in Essex is that these young people are coming with some great ideas as to how we tackle inactivity. How do we get communities more engaged? How do we talk to some of those groups that we failed to attract to and really made a difference to? And I think that's really important, that they come with a really strong perspective and some ideas that would be very stupid to ignore. So we've really taken that on board and certainly endorse what Gary just said, that really using them and embedding them into the business to really add value to the approach that you're trying to make in your agendas.
And with respect, Jace, if you had come into this almost as a CSR type project, it's what Active Essex should do. Let's provide some places here and bring together employers. That again is a start and finish line that is of course going to have benefit. But again, it's missing that potential. The fact that you and the team have fully embraced this and said, well, let's get them working on community programs that sit within our strategy. Let's get them on to fundraising drives to support this. Let's get this organisation now connected with this organisation, because the apprentices can join up and link together. It's all of these kind of different fireworks that just start popping off when you have this vehicle of apprenticeships at the heart of what you do. So yeah. Kudos from us as well.
I think just one quick thing from me as well, Jason. I'd just be interested to get your perspectives on this, which is, I remember I hadn't been long in post, and I was contributing to a survey that you'd commissioned at Active Essex that was looking into what the skills needs were within Essex, within sport and physical activity. So obviously we've got a lot of people from different organisations and different parts of the sector on the webinar, but I think it might be just worth just drawing out the fact that you'd understood first and foremost what was needed to help growth to take place within the area that you're working within, and then that made it, I assume, made it easier for you to make the case that apprentices have got a role to play in meeting the skills needs of the growth of physical activity in Essex. Is that a fair summation of what you did here?
Yeah, absolutely, Stuart. Absolutely, Stuart. I absolutely knew that apprenticeships and working with Gary was absolutely the right thing to do. But actually working with strategic partners in the county, it was really imperative, as you just described, to really articulate that ambition by doing what we call, and in fact, we're refreshing it now, colleagues online, our sector skills plan. So a real clear action plan around actually how we're going to address the skills of our sector here in Essex. And we as Active Essex, as the Active Partnership, absolutely feel the absolute commitment that we need to drive that kind of agenda. there was 4 things that came out of that piece of work for us, and you'll see for each of these exactly how Coach Core can and has successfully embedded itself into helping us to do that. The first one was to kind of increase awareness of jobs across the sector and training opportunities. Well, we've absolutely done that. Coach Core's done that because we've created jobs that weren't there. Coach Core's created by the fact that we've got 80% of these young people now in the sector. Some of those jobs didn't exist, and by doing that, those employers have created jobs because they've recognised the gaps that their organisation certainly had. The second was for us to develop strong partnerships, Stuart, across the county with the leisure sector, but more importantly, as Gary just alluded to, he talked about popping up these different conversations, starting to link more effectively with public sector partners, starting to link effectively with private sector businesses as well. And we've started to do that just with some of the partners that we've been able to bring to the table, has created that real collaboration of actually how we're going to solve the challenges and opportunities around the sector skills here in the county. The third one, which is what you're doing here today, Gary, with Stuart's help, which is spot on, signposting to funding, schemes for young people and employers. We absolutely feel in Essex that was really important, and Coach Core certainly ticks the box in every sense for that. And then finally, raising the awareness of the scope of employment and career opportunities in the sector, and making sure that we've got that ability to signpost and help young people and anyone who wants a job in the sector, how they might go about doing that. And that might be about qualifications to start with, that might be work experiences, so many different things, but very much be able to do that. So Stuart, yes, this was the bedrock, certainly for us, as a platform that we built to ensure that we could recognise and demonstrate just how important apprenticeships were, and in this case, Coach Core, to that development of our sector skills plan here in the county.
Stuart, can I quickly chip in on something this as well, please?
Course, yeah.
I think one of the biggest things that's really excited me over the years is that we, ourselves included, used to kind of operate a little bit in silo with this. We'd have our own apprenticeship, offer and what we would do. And I think the most encouraging thing that I've really seen a shift, particularly since government started to put this kind of, spotlight on the world of apprenticeships and the power of it, is that the sector's really starting to kind of join up. And as you know, from a Coach Core perspective, for us, it's been critical that there's always been that pathway. How can we support learners at the start, via how they come into us from traineeships or Kickstart or, more recent parlance sort of thing. What are those level 1 type opportunities into that first meaningful bridge back into employment and education? But then critically, where do they go next? And so for us, that partnership working has become so much easier in recent years. We work with Lifetime Training mainly as a training provider that have done fantastic work with us to support where we are on our level 2 journey. But then it's been about working with the street games, sports structures, or those kind of guys that if there's an option to pass them through, it's become so much easier now. Or if it's around qualifications and apprenticeships that we can't offer, that we can refer them so much easier. So I think the really exciting thing for me now is that we as a sector have got opportunities and can show true career pathways through the work of SIMSPA and Sport England to show that this is a really meaningful sector for a young person to really dedicate their future kind of career life to, because there is this progression pathway. And I think that's the thing that excites me now, is that we've got some really good people around the table that are banging the drum to show that this is a worthwhile sector to come and work in.
And who better as an example of that than your good self, coach to chief executive. But there's so many stories of leaders in our sector. You mentioned SIMSPA a minute ago. Tara Dillon started out as a lifeguard and is now the chief executive of the Chartered Institute for Sport and Physical Activity. So there's so many examples of people's meandering journeys and careers, but actually many of us, and I include myself in this, started out, I started out working in local authority sports development, going and doing lunchtime sports activity clubs in order to encourage more kids into different activities. And this is how a lot of us started. I would have loved to have started on an apprenticeship. In actual fact, I started out with my own apprentices. Talk about the blind leading the blind. But anyway, one of them's gone on to work for the International Cricket Federation. So, obviously I don't think it was anything to do with me, but anyway, it's always all to do with him. But it just shows the journey and the pathway. We've reached half time. and that was really quick. And we're going to move into the second half. Before we do, there's a question I want to come to, though, that I might just ask both of you just to sort of respond to very, very quickly. So the question's coming from Sam Sawney. I hope I've said that right, which is about, do the panel have any thoughts on the key differences between this kind of opportunity versus, say, the Kickstarter program, and how do apprenticeships overcome the stigma of being seen sometimes as cheap labour, or don't always lead to the candidates being fed into a sustainable role in the sector? I know this is probably a question that you get a lot. So Gary, first, if you could give me 30 seconds on that.
30 seconds on this, something I feel quite strongly about. Okay, traineeships and certainly Kickstart, I think it has a place if it is framed and offered correctly. So if it really is a true meaningful foothold for young people to come back into employment and education, fantastic. My concern is that there are too many organisations that are signing up for it. I mean, to use the words there is great, and has always been my suspicion for cheap labour, short-term solution, that it benefits more the employer than it does the young person in particular. They're going to come out the other side of this. So if there's a connection point of, I want to use Kickstart in order for them to come onto an apprenticeship and progress through, or maybe not even an apprenticeship, just into a place of employment, great, then it served its purpose. But my fear, and sadly with the sign-up numbers that are taking place, is that is not happening. And so, you know, very biased, of course, I will always champion the power of the apprenticeship over traineeship and Kickstart. But as I say, that's not to completely poo-poo it, because if people are really considering it and thinking about it and joining it up, it has absolutely a place to play.
Jason, Gary stole 30 of your seconds, but anyway, if you wanted to, if you got anything to chip in, please go ahead.
I'll leave the Kickstart one because I totally agree with what you said there. You know, a short-term fix, only for the wrong reasons, not long enough, and think about the individual. And I always take the point of think about it how you would feel doing this particular role. So just really think about that, about what you're giving back to the individual. But the second point about the cheap labour, actually, that's the wrong reason for any employer on this call here today if they're going into the apprenticeship kind of journey. It's got to be about how it aligns to how it adds value to your business, but at the same time, how you're giving back to that individual to help them develop their career. I think that's really, really important. So I can sit here quite proudly and say that actually every young person through the Essex programme has had an experience that they're going to never forget and has helped them onto their stepping stone, a bit like you just described, Stuart, for that individual around cricket, that actually that they'll remember that experience and it's taken them on to do something else. And that's what you want. You want to leave a lasting legacy for an individual that says, I was at Active Essex, the consortium, and it was a really exciting experience, and I now got this job. Not the negative saying they just maybe make the tea and pack all the sports play, because that, you're in it for the wrong game, wrong reason.
Yeah, I would totally agree with that. I think this is like anything, isn't it? You're going to get out of it what you put in, and that goes for any employer. So if you're a responsible employer with the right kind of mentality and ethos, and you put energy into these individuals, then you'll get back what you put into that. If you go into it with the wrong intentions in the first place, then don't be surprised if things don't quite work out. But I think that's probably one of the other benefits that Coach Core bring, which is a nice little segue into the next phase, Gary, which is really about actually, you do play a bit of a role identifying the right kinds of employers, because it's important that if you're going to take on apprentices and you're going to work with employment consortia, that you make sure that the people who are getting involved are doing so for the right reasons and understand what's being involved. So it's not as if you're asking employers to do this completely blind. There is support from the team to enable that to happen. So this takes us nicely into the second half. I wonder if I could just use that as a little springboard to start the next stage, and if you could sort of move us into that.
Nicely done. Yes, absolutely. And that due diligence piece that you mentioned there, I mean, Amy's on the call that we'll hear from shortly. Paul's in the chat box. So all of our team are kind of here in terms of program management. So yeah, I mean, ultimately, what is Coach Core? We are essentially a social mobility charity that uses sport and apprenticeships. And it's key that we underline it's that way round. So we are here to use that sport and apprenticeship hook just simply to be the bridge back into employment and education for particularly young people working or living in disadvantaged areas. So we believe that that is talent, that isn't disadvantage, that isn't, you know, barriers or anything like that. We call that talent, because typically that is where the things like COVID have hit most. So as we know, youth unemployment is soaring at the moment, up to nearly 15% compared to 5% of UK average. So for us, when you're not taking advantage and listening to the views and the potential that those young people can can have. That's what the role of Coach Core is. We are here to try to bring together the right people. So if you have to surmise what Coach Core does, we are a grant giving, convening body. So we're not a training provider, we're not an employer, we are a neutral body that simply uses the power of apprenticeships in sport and brings together all the incredible people doing incredible things already. We just happen to be huge advocates, ex-coaches, ex-sports development officers, all in the same room, that are championing the cause of young people and making employers understand just how strong the program can be. Essentially for us, what we do though is we recognize that on our program, we are providing this bridge back into. So we use the level 2 community activator coach qualification at the moment. We're looking at a level 3 offer in the future. But very much focusing on that so that we can work with sports development and physical activity providers to have this offer. And as I said right at the start, it's been built since 2012, where the frustrations of coaches and employers at that time, like myself, were that it was two very separate things. You would have college over here, which is an environment that young people completely disengaged with a long time ago, certainly the type that we target. And then you've got employers over here, and they would just sit very separately. We wanted, through the training providers that I've mentioned previously, we wanted to bring college essentially to them. You don't learn by, you know, being in a classroom how to be a coach. So we wanted to bring that to them. So it's a case of fundraising with a number of amazing corporates that we work with, like Collinson's and Somerset, high net worths, trusts and foundations, to provide some grant funding to employers to reflect the additional short-term setup costs that it takes to bring on a young person that has potentially faced some barriers previously or needs that little bit of extra support. But also, as I said, and as you mentioned there, it's providing that support network around. It's not, here's an apprenticeship program and off you go. It's always been a case of, this is the best training provider for this program. Here are a group of like-minded employers. Let's connect you all together, provide a little bit of funding, but also then unlock locally and nationally all of those extra training opportunities, courses, events that can benefit the young person and really stack out their CV, but also benefit you as a business, because all of that amazing enrichment is going to come back into your organization and potentially also link those businesses up for different opportunities as well. So we've been doing that since 2012. We've got 15 cities around the UK, and we're growing, and we know what we're doing. We've had 600 apprentices now, 90% success rate, which blows national stats out of the water, especially when you're considering, you know, who we target and who we work with. You know, and the ripple effect and the impact of Coach Core is that all of those young people are then being redeployed back out into the community. So it's employer tick, it's young person tick, and it's local community, from people that look, sound, walk, talk exactly like us. Who better to live and breathe those values back to the next generation than someone that, you know, as an example, lived on that estate delivering football on that mugger pitch there. So, you know, we know in a given year you're looking at anywhere between 30 to 40,000 coaching sessions and, you know, 500,000 coaching interactions just from those small groups of apprentices in those sites around the UK. So hopefully a 9 years potted history, but essentially Coach Core's role, as I say, is to work with many of the employers and organisations, some of which are dialing in today, to really help enhance your workforce, provide you with the support on what is, we know, a very tricky subject of apprenticeships, and ensure that you're getting the right support financially, organisationally, to make it really work and to benefit ultimately that young person.
Brilliant stuff. Let's hear from some people who are right at the coalface of this. So we have a panel that we have convened, or the Coach Core team have convened. We've got Amy Fazackerley, commonly known as Faz to her friends. I don't know why I get her to call her Faz, but I consider her one of my friends, who works at Coach Core, and she's right at the coalface working with employers. So Amy, good to have you with us. Phil Hanna from Dallaglio Rugby Works. I'll let Phil introduce himself in a second. We've got Kerry Swan, who's at Tees Active, also employing apprenticeships. And the star of the show, Ben Fox, an apprentice, going through the process, working hard, and who better to sort of tell us a little bit about what the experience is. Ben, if we wouldn't mind, let me start with you. firstly, tell us a little bit about yourself, and also what was it that sort of attracted you to doing an apprenticeship, working with Coach Core, and what have your experiences been like so far?
Yeah, so I work for the Plymouth Raiders basketball club. I've graduated Coach Core about 2 years ago, and I've managed to get myself a full-time job with the club now. So when I left sixth form, I was very passionate about doing something within the world of sport, particularly basketball. I've tried university. I didn't last very long at all, 7 weeks to be precise, and just found it wasn't for me. I didn't enjoy being sat there kind of reading and writing about things. I found that I wanted to do something that I could learn on the job and actually get some real experience from. I came back home and my mentor at the time kind of said, look, we've been approached by Coach Core to run an apprenticeship. Would you like to apply? I applied and obviously managed to get the apprenticeship. I think the biggest things that I kind of got from Coach Core was really that arm around me, support. I feel like when I came on, they were so invested in every single apprentice, and all the training days that we did allowed me to put those skills that I was learning in the classroom with Donna, my tutor, and actually go and put them into a real life situation where I wasn't just getting someone's one piece of feedback. I was actually getting a room of 25 people's feedback, and I was being able to make mistakes and actually learn on the job, which is what life is. It's not about, practicing for an exam or anything. It's actually going out there, and if you make a mistake, actually trying to right that mistake. And I found that my apprenticeship really allowed me to do that. So that was kind of like the biggest thing I got from Coach Core.
Fantastic. I'm really jealous. I did my level 2, then did my level 3, and then went 15 years making all those mistakes on my own, feeling very lonely. And I feel sorry for anybody who was coached by me during those 15 years. You did it in 15 months. So I think it's power to how impactful that can be. I'll come back to you in a second, Ben, but I'd like to just move over to just speak to Kerry from Tees Active. You've been employing apprentices, and I'd just be interested to get some of your experiences.
Thank you, Stuart, and thanks for inviting me today. It's been a very positive and encouraging experience from Tees Active's point of view. We are a charitable leisure management company, and we operate in the Stockton-on-Tees area. We have 6 venues, and we have over 2 million visits a year to our venues. So very busy, very customer focused organisation, and we wanted to get involved in offering opportunities for young people via the apprenticeship programme. We had experience outside of Coach Core, which I suppose let us dip our toes in the water and have some experience. But from our point of view, it's important to introduce young people to our industry, and specifically Tees Active. And what we find locally in the area that we operate is a lot of young people find it difficult to be competitive in the labour market because they're lacking in experience, they haven't got the hands-on work experience or the personal and professional development. And from our point of view, we will be able to offer that opportunity to young people. We could provide the apprenticeship opportunity, train and develop young people in jobs that were important to our business in the leisure, the physical activity centre, and our health and fitness. And I think one of the other important things is it gave us the opportunity, I suppose, if you like, it was a long interview process for us. We had the young people for 15 months. We could assess their suitability, look at their skill set, improve their qualifications and further experience. And as Gary and other people have mentioned, let them have experience in different parts of the business as well. And we could support them in doing that. And at the end of our programme, I am pleased to say that all of our young people that were involved in the apprenticeship, 100% of those young people are still with Tees Active now, fully employed in sustainable employment opportunities, and they are progressing further within the organisation. a lot of our young people have diversed into different areas within the business. They're now swimming coaches, they're now PT level 3 members of staff, or they're progressing higher into further opportunities within the business. So for us, quite rightly, as Jason said, it's give us the opportunity to grow our own staff, to get these young people involved in opportunities that they wouldn't be involved in if they were just applying for vacancies outside of the apprenticeship programme. So it's been absolutely fantastic for us. And also it's helped us tackle some skills shortage areas where we haven't been able to fill our opportunities or our vacancies because other people haven't had the right skill set. So we've trained our apprentices to that skill set that we need, and we've been able to fill vacancies for that way as well.
Brilliant, brilliant. The phrase "grow your own" actually just came straight to my head. You know, like rather than going out there, expensive process of hiring, getting it wrong, actually being able to sort of build a new workforce based on young people and then start to then deploy them into different parts of the business as their abilities grow is a really interesting and I think a valuable tool. Phil, let me just turn to you. I know Dallaglio Rugby Works, and to me it feels like that would be a natural home for many of the Coach Corps apprentices, but not everybody necessarily knows what you do. So I wonder if you could give us a very quick potted history and then also your experience as an employer.
Yeah, cheers, Stuart, and again, thank you for inviting me to be part of this. So Dallaglio Rugby Works, we're a sport for development charity, and ultimately we exist to help change the lives of young people. We're a national organisation across the UK. This is our first experience of employing an apprentice this year, and obviously our first experience with Coach Corps. We wanted to get involved for so many reasons, and so many of them have kind of been touched on already, but being a young person-centred charity, providing opportunities for young people and essentially kind of practicing what we preach when we work with young people. So we've taken on one apprentice this year. She's been amazing. It's been a great journey so far. A big part of the learning and kind of the reasons for us doing it was to learn from the apprentice and become more of a young person centered organisation. Obviously this year delivering to young people has been tricky, but having our apprentice in has been amazing. She's involved, and Gary touched on this earlier actually, in terms of the 30 hours and where that can be made up when it's not necessarily coaching. So our apprentice is involved in lots of working groups around female participation, specifically involved in a lot of our social media stuff as well. So I feel like the whole team has learned quite a lot from her this year, and it's been a great opportunity for us, and definitely something that we'll be looking to roll out more in the future for sure.
Oh, brilliant! Really good to hear. So Amy, let me just quickly come to you before circling back to Ben. You're the glue, Amy, obviously. You know, you sort of bring together some of the consortia and the different partnerships, and you know, often find the ones finding the placements and supporting the apprentices, etc., etc. So just going through, you know, your experiences being part of the Coach Corps team and seeing the growth and all those sorts of things, just be useful to get your reflections on that.
Thanks, Stuart. Yeah, absolutely. I think to take it back to my own experience before joining Coach Corps, I had some experience previously of managing a couple of young people on an apprenticeship programme. And as essentially the direct line manager, I felt quite out of touch in terms of what they were learning and how I could support them to put that learning into practice. And I felt, certainly with Coach Corps, the way that we operate in terms of that wider consortium model really allowed that wider level of support, as Ben sort of touched upon earlier. But apprenticeships, I think, certainly given the last year that we've had, they're a fantastic way to support an organisation to start to rebuild. Phil touched upon it there in terms of their reasoning for joining the programme. I think actually it provides an amazing opportunity to bring new insight into your organisation and to start to think a little bit differently about how we work. And Gary mentioned it from a coach corps perspective, even with us taking on our first ever apprentice a few months back. Already we're, as a team, we're starting to think slightly differently about how we operate and how can we do things slightly differently to really support young people and make sure that they are front and centre of everything that we do moving forward. So, you know, it's been a really challenging year for everybody. It's going to be a challenge moving forward in terms of how we rebuild and kind of recover from the pandemic. But absolutely, apprentices are an amazing way to start to bring that back together and to get those different insights of what it's been like on the ground. How can we support those young people as we start to rebuild the sector, as we start to rebuild young people and their prospects for the future. So it's a really exciting time for us, certainly for Coach Corps, but I think for apprenticeships, full stop, because they're certainly needed now more than ever in terms of supporting young people and getting them into that journey of long-term employment and education. So it's absolutely an exciting time to be involved.
So Ben, let me come back to you. Thanks, Amy. Let me come back to you on this. So in your journey, I imagine, beyond the qualification, beyond the formal things and all that sort of stuff, I can imagine that there were lots of other personal growth moments and developments and all those sorts of things that have sort of passed you onto your career. So firstly, you know, what sticks out in your mind around the sort of things that you benefited from? And then also I'd be interested just to get, you know, if you've got a sense of where you might go, where your future is and what your kind of ultimate goals might be.
Yeah, so I think the biggest thing that I kind of realised when I started my initial apprenticeship with Coach Corps was that there was way more to the sporting world than just the coaching on the court. And I think a big part of it for me was sort of learning how to interact with people on a different level. So being able to, you know, vary whether I was talking to a 4-year-old child to somebody like a head teacher of a school trying to get us to go in and work there. So it was the language that I used and, you know, the way in which I phrased things was really, really big for me. And it's something that I continue to try and work on. And I think, I mean, a real sort of personal feeling was just my self-confidence. I've always been quite an unconfident person in what I believe I can do. And I think being with Coach Corps and kind of being given those opportunities by the club to actually go out in the field and work with various people, I think you can't help but see the impact that you're having. And that started to really build my confidence and grow my passion to sort of keep growing as a coach and as someone working within the sport. In terms of where I see it kind of going, I've got to be honest, I'm a bit of an open book. I'm not bothered. I love what I do. I've kind of dipped my toe into a little bit of everything. I'm really fortunate with the club that I've got the most amazing support network of staff that I work with that have allowed me to kind of have, you know, put my toe in a little bit of each department. And I'm happy with whatever I do as long as I'm in the sport and I'm kind of getting a chance to work with people and help make someone smile that day, then I don't mind what I do really. But certainly the skills that I've picked up from Coach Corps and you know, lifetime, I'll use those experiences no matter where I go. So anything within the club would make me happy.
Well, I mean, judging by my experiences of working with apprentices, and I wasn't a particularly good mentor, and I know that Coach Corps have really good mentors, and also judging by your masterful webinar presentation skills, I'll be looking for you as Chief Executive of the British Basketball League or something similar in a few years' time. So that's great. Kerry, Phil, just to sort of wrap this up a little bit, any final thoughts for any potential employers out there thinking of jumping into the lovely warm waters that is apprenticeships? Anything that speaks to mind? Let me ask you first, Kerry, if you don't mind.
No, not a problem at all. I just think the level of support that you get from the Coach Corps Consortium has been absolutely fantastic. We've had support with the recruitment and the selection process to ensure we've attracted the right type of candidates. We've got that dedicated regional trainer that provides the support with the training and development, and they link in and provide a holistic support arrangement with both employer and young person. And the partnership working with the employer consortium, the governing bodies, it's allowed us the opportunity to share good practice as well, and the additional coaching opportunities it's provided for the young people. So all in all, it's just been a very positive experience, both from an employer's point of view and for that learning journey for the young person. And, you know, as we've all already mentioned, it's becoming increasingly difficult for a young person to secure employment opportunities at this present time, especially, you know, with the economic austerity at the moment. And we're providing that opportunity for that young person to get the foot in the door with an organisation and develop and progress. And it's also helping us with our recruitment processes as well. So, you know, I believe for those young people who find it difficult in an educational setting, that can come into an apprenticeship, which is a hands-on programme, they can learn, they can develop, and we're both reaping the benefits of that, both from the employer's point of view and the young person. Fantastic for me to sit here and say 100% of my young people are still in sustainable employment opportunities with Tees Active, and they continue to grow in our organisation, and that's what it's all about from me.
That stat is a brilliant stat, but one thing I would say, Kerry, is for me that's as much a testament of how fantastic an employer you are as it is about the employees. So you know, massive virtual fist bumps for that.
Thank you.
Phil, if I could come to you just to finish off the segment before I give Gary 3 minutes to wrap things up. Just from your perspective then, I mean, one of the things that I just saw in the chat there was a question about small organisations. And I mean, one of the reasons that we work with Coach Core is that we actually know sport and physical activity is 80% micro business, less than 10 people in there. And actually, the small employer is kind of how our sector has grown in the last 10 years. And so supporting small employers is a big part of this. So size genuinely in this case does not matter. Phil, I wonder if you could speak to that a little bit, but also just some other experiences.
Yeah, no, I was literally trying to type out an answer just then in the chat box to that one, so very timely. I think it kind of links into the consortium piece as well, doesn't it? So although we're a national organisation, we're circa 30 employees, so we're not a big organisation. I know somebody said they're an organisation with 10 employees there, but I would encourage an organisation even of that size to have an apprentice come in. And I think that consortium element, well, for us, a big part of what we're trying to do with young people is expose them to as many opportunities as possible. So similar when we have an apprentice in and being part of a consortium, and the opportunities that come from that is enabling us to expose our apprentices to as many opportunities as possible and just kind of broadening their horizons as well. So I would encourage anybody, even if they feel like they're quite a small organisation, still to be part of the process.
Brilliant, Phil. That's really appreciate it. And everybody on the panel, Ben, Kerry, Phil, Amy, thank you all for your contributions and coming on and sharing your experiences. It's been really eye-opening for me, but also really useful. Gary, I'm going to hand back to you. You have news. You've got a new strategy coming out, and we can probably wrap the webinar based on you telling the world a little bit about that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the key thing, just before I quickly give some snippets of info on that, is just the final points there were great questions and great responses. We're so grateful to our employer base who are just, you know, believe in the programme and really get stuck in for everything that it's worth and contribute not just to the apprentices that they work with, but also those apprentices that, you know, sit within those consortiums. And I think that's the key takeaway as well, that these apprentices are to be shaped by you. They're not shaped by us. We're not giving you an apprentice. You hire, you recruit, and you shape and mold them around the needs of you in the business. So I just wanted to underline that. Yes, new strategy for the next 3 years, 5 strands. So our sites, our support, our apprentices, our employers, the community, and then the insights element as well, all of which is available on our website. So I'm not going to go into them all hugely, but ultimately what it means is we want to do more. We're in 15 cities right now. We want to take that up and over to sort of 20, and we're keen to listen to other people as to where you want us to go. I think that's the key thing. Previously, we would identify areas of need and really hone in on where we feel we should go. But part of the webinar today is to start to build an understanding of where are the areas that really want this and want to do this, because we want to be even more employer-led than we've ever done before. And as I mentioned earlier, you know, we've responded to COVID. I'm really proud of how we've responded to COVID. Despite all of those challenges, we launched 5 new programs and have changed the lives of, you know, 60 young people within that. And as we move forwards, you know, with the new level 3 offer potentially on the horizon as well, essentially, we just want to make sure that Coach Core is felt by more employers, more young people and more communities over the next 3 years. So go to our website. Please don't hesitate to get in touch with us, and we'd be happy to talk that through.
Brilliant stuff, Gary. I appreciate that. I should also say I forgot to thank Jason for his contribution earlier on. Jason, that was brilliant to have you here. So thank you very much for sharing your experiences. The way I'll just wrap this up, Gary, is to say to you that I feel very privileged that that we're able to work together in our partnership with Sports England. I feel that the sort of smallish contribution that we can make to the growth of your organisation is is you pay us back in spades, if you like. If you want to look at it in those terms, you pay us back by the work that you do, obviously. And I wish every partnership we had was as fruitful and beneficial, and the team, everybody worked in just with so much dedication. We are fortunate to have a lot of brilliant partners, so I'm not going to criticize anybody, but you guys do really push it out there. And looking forward to some further discussions about where we go over the next 3, 5, 10 years with the rollout of Uniting the Movement. So very much a watch this space. Thank you for inviting me to host this webinar. It's been really exciting and really great to be part of. And for everybody else, I hope you have a good afternoon. And I look forward to you all flooding into the inboxes of Coach Core to work with them.
Thank you, Stuart. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in.